Welcome to the PFF NFL show. I'm your host, Mike Renner. Joining me 3 days a week here is going to be Sam Monson, Steve Palazzolo. We're reformatting the podcast a little bit here. We're going to make it we wanted to make it a little better for you guys. It's going to be me, Sam, and Steve, like I said, 3 days a week. Little different show each show. We're going to transition to draft here with the playoffs going. But with the wild card week in the books, we're going to hit all 4 games here. So let's kick it off with Titans, Chiefs. Chiefs up 21-3 at halftime. Blow it down the stretch. Don't score in the whole second half. Sam, what happened? What happened to Kansas City? Was it really Andy Reid's fault?
Some of it probably. I think the big thing, we talked exhaustively on the podcast last week heading into these games about all the various ways that they could play out and how things were going to go and how each team matched up against each other. The one thing that you cannot predict in playoff games is injuries. And when you lose, a key guy goes down and completely transforms a game. I think Travis Kelce going down in this game was one of those situations. You lost one of Kansas City's key contributors, one of their matchup problems. Tyreek Hill is the other significant guy there, and he was having a bad day at the office, 3 drops, one of which early was that deep ball that we were talking about against Adoree Jackson. So, with Tyreek Hill not having his best game, I think Travis Kelce would have been key to this encounter in the second half, and he wasn't out there. So I think that was a huge part of it, and probably enough to tip the balance.
Especially when you look at down the stretch, every key third down that Kansas City needed to make in Tennessee, that they play man coverage. It's what they do, third highest man coverage percentage in the NFL. You need your go-to guy, right? You need that guy that can win one-on-one. Nobody was winning one-on-one. Travis Kelce's normally that guy. That is a huge factor. The one other thing for me, I think playoff time, your weaknesses come out, right? And when it comes to Kansas City, I think the underrated weakness all year that had been there, it was there all season, was their run defense. And I think that showed up down the stretch, and Derrick Henry ran all over them. And usually we talk here about how the run game can be overrated a little bit sometimes and all that fun stuff, but it's a huge factor in this one with Henry and what he was able to do.
No, we said it on the preview podcast. We said when, to the Titans' chance in this one was to spread out Kansas City and go option-heavy looks, a la what, like I said, Deshaun Watson did to him back early in the season and ran all over him. In 8 runs that they had on Saturday with no option look, they gained 35 yards, 4.4 yards per carry. On 16 runs that they had with an option look, they gained 131 yards, 8.2 yards per carry. They just gashed them with those option looks because they just didn't have enough. They don't play with enough numbers in the box, KC, to account for it, and those gaps get wide, and Derrick Henry had so much room to roam.
Yeah, huge part of it. And late in the game, when the Chiefs needed a stop, they needed to get the ball back, Frank Zombo on the edge just could not keep contained. Just blew a couple of those, allowed Derrick Henry to gain or turn relatively modest gains into big plays and get first downs and keep the chains moving, and that ended the game.
Yeah, Frank Zombo was the lowest grade player for Kansas City in this game, played 51 snaps. It's like they couldn't have used James Harrison. They didn't put in a claim for the guy. Like,
ooh, you wanted James Harrison,
legitimately,
James Harrison, but
I'm just
Eric
saying,
Fisher's
like,
confidence
Zombo
at practice, though.
No, they should have signed
shot.
him just to stop him having any prospect of him going up against Eric Fisher in the playoffs. That was reason alone to sign James Harrison.
Now that was the difference in the end. I mean, you do need to make a stop. Zombo really struggled, but it was a year-long deal for Kansas City that did get exploited. Tennessee, they're just that weird team. I thought all year we were like, hey, this isn't really a dangerous team in the playoffs because they don't do anything special, right? There's nothing about their defense that scares you. Yeah, they could run the ball a little bit when they're on. Mariota's had some ups and downs. He's had those high-end plays. That touchdown he threw, that was one of those big-time throws. He was number 2 in the NFL, big-time throws. So Tennessee's just this weird team where I think in the second half everything came together for them.
What about the touchdown he threw to himself?
Well, look, when you can throw a touchdown to yourself and then make the key block to seal the game, I mean, that is MVP-level stuff. That's special stuff. Now, does he get double the fantasy points for that?
People kept asking me. That was all over my timeline. I have no idea what the answer to that was.
Did we dig into that?
That's correct. He does.
He does.
Double fantasy points. I mean, he counts as a pass and a reception.
Why wouldn't quarterbacks do that more often?
Intentionally.
I've always wondered if, obviously you can't just toss it over a guy's head to yourself, but it would be pretty cool if you could. Like, you're out and scrambling, and then you throw it up over his head.
Michael Vick could. If Michael Vick had a little bit more touch,
you could do it. This is what
he'd miss himself.
Mariota
could.
bringing out the old rugby highlights, Brian O'Driscoll, it's one of his famous plays. Toss the ball to himself over
Sam.
a player.
No, this is a new show. We're not trying to lose any more listeners.
You
Sam.
drop rugby more than I drop baseball.
No.
I think that's
not true.
No, but if you do look at this game, big picture, the Chiefs are a better team, I think. Right? We're pretty in agreement with that. You've got a touchdown for Mariota as a factor. Also, the sack and no fumble where he got absolutely destroyed.
This was horrendous
and blindsided
in this game.
I mean, these are big plays. Obviously, when you come back and it's a 1-point game, those are big, huge plays. One of them's just this lucky, quirky touchdown. One of them, blindsided, fumble, and plays.
To be fair, also the Kelsey injury play also looked like a fumble.
Yeah,
like that should have been
that's true. I mean,
it worked.
Well. It did work.
And they ended up scoring a touchdown and on that drive. So.
Right.
It did
I
go
think
both ways.
in this game, overall, the officiating evened itself out, but it was universally crappy.
Yeah, no, for sure. That was atrociously officiated game.
It was Jeff Triplett's last game. So
how did he get a playoff game?
I think it's because he was retiring.
I think he has his own rules when it comes to fumbles.
I'm pretty sure there was a deal like, hey, Jeff, we'll give you a playoff game if you call it quits.
He's the only guy I've seen call that forward progress with a fumble, and I've seen him do it twice in the last few weeks. He has his own rules for fumble plays. That's insane.
If your momentum got hit backwards as you're losing the ball.
Yeah, you cannot, according to Jeff Triplett, you cannot fumble the ball.
No, that was bad. Was the play calling, though, somewhat to blame for Kansas City passing as much as they did on the stretch? Kareem Hunt, only 11 carries. I'm of the opinion that no, I don't think it was, but or any of you guys want to blaze a hot take? Because there seems like a lot of people seem to be upset about that.
I think it was more execution. I mean, if you hit on a couple of those passes, if you hit a 3rd and 3, if you instead of going incomplete on 1st and 10, it's 2nd and 5. That does change the story. But all year, Kareem Hunt's been that second half guy, right? We've talked. He early in the year, especially, was Mr. Fourth Quarter, and he'd have 40 yards going into the fourth quarter, and before you know it, he's at 140 or whatever it was. He was the closer, so that has been their script this year, and they did get away from it just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean the problem is these things spiral very quickly because of game flow from what.
Yeah, it's like 2, 3 and outs, and all of a sudden, oh shit, you're back.
And now when you start looking at the box score, suddenly it's we've not run the ball all quarter or all half. I had no problem last year with the Atlanta Falcons play calling in the Super Bowl. They just any one of half a dozen plays goes their way, and we're not talking about that because they were aggressive enough to win that game. This I think is a similar kind of deal where it's only a problem because the plays didn't work. It's not that. Going away from the run game necessarily was bad. It's that the execution wasn't there.
Yeah, and it wasn't like Hunt was rolling and they went away from him. He had one 16-yard run and then was averaging 2.6 yards per carry on all his other ones. They were stopping the run fairly well. It just So I don't blame them for what they did. You should have stopped them at the end.
Yeah, look, if you are going up against Tennessee, they are that team that is much more one-sided as far as being better at stopping the run than they are stopping the pass. So from a game plan standpoint, it's not the worst thing in the world. I do think it comes down to execution. A couple more runs here and there couldn't hurt. But I think it still comes back to your first point about Kelsey. Because if you are going to try to win with the pass against the team that plays all that man coverage, you need somebody to win. And how many passes? It's 3rd and 11. Alex Smith has nobody open. He drops his eyes. He takes a sack, or it was a 1-yard gain. I mean, those are the types of plays that showed up in the second half where Tennessee just did a great job covering, and there was nobody to get open for Kansas City.
Yep, and eventually Kansas City came away with the L. Unfortunate. Titans go to face the Patriots next week. Let's keep it moving on to the Falcons, who traveled to L.A. and in the least exciting game of the weekend came away victorious 26-13. I have to say I was disappointed by the Rams' overall game plan. I thought there would just be more downfield passing in it, and they kept checking down, and the Falcons just kept making the plays.
Falcons were incredible. Open field on that terrible field. Guys were slipping left and right. That Matt Ryan touchdown pass where he slipped and still got the ball off, but guys were falling all over the place on that surface.
How, sanitized has the game come? There were people all over Twitter bitching about that surface and how it's a disgrace and it's dangerous and it's grass. Deal with it. That's what people used to play every game on. That's just a field.
No, half the games were on concrete, old artificial turf.
With carpet on top, yeah,
Yes.
Okay. Well, whatever. That was just a field. Everyone had to deal with it. Get on with it.
All right, get better cleats. Either way, it was an ugly game, and Atlanta still did a great job of tackling in space. Jared Goff made, 3 or 4 just wow throws into tight windows, but Atlanta just suffocating on the defensive side.
That's the big point you made, the tackling in space thing. They were fantastic at that all game long. Deion Jones was, again, ridiculous in coverage, but they had Todd Gurley bottled up, which was a huge part of that Rams offense. I like this, though. This is justified my upset pick of the week.
I was going to say, it really spoke to what we said before, in that this Falcons defense is a lot better than it was a season ago.
You did not have a great week in picks, Mike.
Okay, wait. I didn't think we'd bring that up, but I wasn't going to bring up your season record just now. But if you want to bring this one up, all right. Yeah, I didn't have a great week. I went 1-3. All right, it happens.
1-3.
I picked some bad upsets.
0-3 at one point until that last game saved him.
I heard you on the Sirius show, Mike, because I had I was snowed in. I heard you on the Sirius show. You almost convinced me
to pick
the Rams. You almost made me doubt my pick of the Falcons because you had some. What were your reasons for the Rams, and why did that not play out? Because I thought you had some good ones in all of your analysis last week.
Walk us through why you were wrong, Mike.
I tried to block it from my memory at this point.
I'm setting you up.
It was. I thought Sean McVay would, like I said, have some more creative concepts down the field to scheme guys open, knowing that the Falcons would either be playing, single high coverages all game long, and they really didn't. Like, Goff was not throwing into any sort of open windows down the field. They didn't have anything other than their dump-off game that they needed, that's been working all year long, and they've relied on it a lot, but it didn't work because maybe the surface, maybe the fact that the Falcons have a lot of athleticism up front, which I did say that, too, in the beginning. I said I was worried about that because it was going to cut off that wide run game that the Rams like, and they really did. So.
What about Andrew Whitworth?
Kudos.
That was the common. We've always got these run-in chats during the games on Skype and everything, and everybody kept being like, hey, Whitworth got beat again. Whitworth got beat again. That was the common theme in our chats.
And the worst part was, it was like Brooks Reed eating up Randy Whitworth, all-pro left tackle, and Brooks Reed had 3 spin moves against him.
Brooks Reed's spin move is weirdly effective for a guy that's otherwise essentially useless. He's got nothing else going for him, but he's actually somehow harnessed the ghost of Dwight Freeney's spin move, and it works against even top-level offensive tackles. The one point, we talked about this when we did the preview, and you were of the opinion that McVay would be able to carve up this defense because they're relatively vanilla and they don't do an awful lot of complex things, and you have the game plan already. You know what they're going to do. The counter to that, I thought, was that they're not going to blitz at you. And so much of what McVay's been able to do has been dial up the right play to beat a complex blitz or to beat something that they're showing you. And the Falcons just don't blitz. They blitzed 8 of 48 dropbacks in this game. And because of that, they just sat back, waited for the Rams to kind of check out of their play, dump it down, and then they just made good open field tackles in space and throttled them that way.
To be fair, also, the game really got out of hand against them early on. I'm sure McVay had a game plan that he wanted to execute throughout the game that he had to change up early because of how big of a hole they dug themselves right off the snap with the fumbles on the punt returns and that sort of stuff. Getting behind the 8 ball early, a lot of the play action stuff that they probably wanted to work didn't end up coming to fruition. I think they only gained something like 30-some yards off of play action all game long. Just did not happen for them. So, yeah, really just everything started going against them, and Jared Goff just couldn't dig them out of the hole. Had a few drops at the end of the game that could have brought them back into it. Didn't happen.
Yeah, he made the tight window throw in the end zone that it was initially ruled a touchdown. It got overturned. I mean, that was a great throw. That was a great throw into a tight window. But I think this is speaking to Atlanta's coverage because you're talking about that was the 3rd down play. The 4th down play, it's Deion Jones covering Sammy Watkins over the middle and breaking up the pass, and people are saying maybe it was a hold, maybe it wasn't. But I've used this phrase about Jacksonville, and I think it could be true for Atlanta at times, is that fine line of physicality that the Seahawks have mastered, right? And it's all the same coaching tree. That fine line of, if you're a little bit more physical, you might get some calls against you, but over time, it's going to make things really tough on the offense, and that's what Atlanta did.
I don't think there was really anybody debating whether that was a hold or not. That was a hold that just wasn't called. The debate, I think, was did they miss it or did they intentionally not call it because they don't want to be
down.
They don't want to be deciding the game. That was pretty egregious.
I think pretty significant.
The big thing about those schemes is that it's not even a case of mastering where the line is. It's a case of daring the officials to call the sheer volume of penalties you're about to commit. It's like if I go out there and I hold every single snap, this guy is not going to throw a flag every single snap.
You can't call every single one.
Yeah, so you're almost basically forcing them to move the line at which they call penalties on you.
2 guys I want to also highlight that had ridiculous performances in a losing effort. One, Aaron Donald. He was if they would have won that game, it would have almost single-handedly been because of him. Because in that first half, he was dominant. Every single one-on-one he had, out of the review of that game, he won. He won every single one-on-one he had. And they just had to double him the entire second half to make sure that they could even execute their game plan. That was he was a man possessed there. And then Sam's boy, Troy Hill, finally got his first start of the season. Targeted 5 times, didn't allow a single catch.
Troy's a big game player. I've always known it. I mean, the problem in the regular season so far is that there just haven't been big enough games for him.
Yeah, he's not motivated enough.
Yeah.
Money doesn't motivate him.
Games.
Now we've hit the prime time, the main games, the playoffs, the real NFL season. Now we see the real Troy Hill come to the fore.
Dude, Aaron Donald, we rave about him quite a bit on here. He's our top-graded, number 2 graded defensive player. Did he overtake Harrison Smith now?
No.
With that performance?
Yeah, no. Off the back of that playoff
Off
game.
the back of that, I think he
well
does overtake Harrison Smith. Either way, we're talking about a guy that's graded above 98 over the last 3 years. I mean, there's...
Yes, he did overtake him by quite some margin, in fact.
So, I mean, Aaron Donald's the top guy, right?
He has now got an overall PFF grade of, on a scale that goes from 0 to 99.9, he currently sits at 99.7.
Yeah, pretty solid. So, top-graded player in the NFL, once again. And you just can't put into words enough just what Aaron Donald does for the defense. Matt Ryan, I mean, he was sidestepping him every single time. Quarterbacks, you have to know where he's coming from. You have to know, and you have to feel it. And then, the offensive line had to adjust, and they slowed him down a touch, but it was still dominant.
The crazy part was he had no real help along the defense. No one else was actually getting consistent pressure. It was just Donald. Donald had 11 pressures. As a team, they had 18 pressures.
I like the plays that on the chalkboard,
yeah.
It's like, all right, the right guard's going to block him, and then the center's going to be there to help, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Alex Mack's over there a split second too late, and Aaron Donald's already by.
The slide was going his way, which when you're outside the guard shoulder and the slide is going your way, so the center's coming your way, you should never beat that unless it's via the bull rush. That's the only way you should be able to get through. And he was swim moving the guard, ripping the center, and he was through a double team clean, which no one else does. No one else does.
Yep.
It was impressive to watch. Too bad we're not going to be able to see it anymore this season. Falcons, though, going forward, Eagles this week. Dangerous.
So the Falcons, it feels like Falcons week here, Sam.
Yeah.
We did a little actually on the Falcons and how dangerous they are. Defensive lines deep. You mentioned Deion Jones. The secondary's intact, and they've been our highest graded team, just pure grades all season, an underrated team because they've been better than their record.
I mean, they have opened that game as betting favorites, going to the number one
first
NFC,
time ever.
Number 1 seed in the NFC, who are now underdogs because Nick Foles is their quarterback.
Because of Foles.
It is, but it also speaks to how good this Falcons team is. They were a pick to go on the road and upset the Rams. They did that. They are the top-graded overall team at PFF, and the top-graded overall team at PFF has made the Super Bowl in 4 of the past 5 seasons. Last season, the top 2 graded teams were the Patriots and the Falcons. So I think there is every reason to think that this team can go on a run and get back to the Super Bowl.
We shall see. All right, let's keep moving to the Sunday games. Bills, Jags. Ugly offenses.
The Depression Bowl.
Not great offenses, but at the same time, it was the defenses are good. Those are good defenses. I can't knock those offenses too much, but yeah, it was a little tough to watch at times. I still enjoyed it. Still had a good time.
This is the first game I think I have ever seen where a team basically stopped trying to pass the football. Not even a team, a quarterback stopped trying to pass the football because I don't think he thought he could execute it himself, and he just started running. Blake Bortles was so bad as a quarterback that he just stopped trying to throw the ball and just took off from the pocket every play instead, and it worked better. I mean, this was a crazy game. I mean, it was very similar to what we talked about on the preview podcast, that so much of this game came down to how it would work in the initial stages. And I think the Bills, they got the early lead, they got a field goal ahead, and I think they were 1 score away from basically taking this game. If they got a touchdown at any point after that, they would have forced Jacksonville to abandon the run, to go to that passing game, and the way Blake Bortles was playing, there was no way that would have gone well for them. But in the end, they were able to cling on enough so they could keep pounding the ball and just grind down the Bills over the game.
They screwed it up by trying to run a 2-minute drill before the half.
Yeah.
Like you hadn't moved the ball all day with the passing game. They should have handed that ball off 3 times and said, "Thank God we're up at halftime."
Yeah.
And gone to the locker room. That's where they screwed it up. Blake Bortles, like you mentioned, he had more rushing yards than passing yards in this game.
That's crazy.
And it's not like the rushing performance that great. He just had 87 passing yards.
Yeah. We spent a lot of time talking about Bortles a few weeks back because he was in the middle of this 4 or 5 week stretch where he was one of the top graded guys. He had some of the best just pure numbers of any quarterback. And it was like, is this a small sample or is this just turning of a corner? What is this for Bortles? But I think the last the game flow is a big factor. When the game gets out of hand, when he has to do too much, that's one factor. But in this game, the game was never really out of hand. It was just, he didn't want anything on his plate. That's risky when you're going into a game and your quarterback can't take anything on his plate. And it's not like the running game was great. So being that reliant on your defense, a little scary for Jacksonville. But that D against Buffalo's passing offense, that's a bit of a mismatch.
I mean, the Bills were selling out to stop the run. They were just crowding the line of scrimmage, stuffing the box, and making sure that Jacksonville couldn't run at all. And the Jags had some of the right plays to counter that. Blake Bortles just could not complete routine passes. He was missing screen plays that would have put the running back in behind the defense and that kind of thing. At that point, I mean, your offense can't function. You literally cannot play if your quarterback can't take advantage of even the most simple pass designed to take, designed for high percentage, easy to complete stuff.
Yeah, you're talking about a Buffalo defense too that has been absolutely torched on the ground by any half decent running attack. But like you said, because they had, they weren't worried about the pass at all, that they could, outnumber the Jags in the box just a little bit, do a little bit better job at the point of attack than they've done, and shut down Mike's boy, Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, well, I think Blake Bortles said it best himself when after he airmailed the crossing route. He said, "What the am I doing?" The cameras caught him saying that. I don't know. That was one of the weirdest quarterback performances I've just ever seen. It was like he forgot to play he just wasn't. He was missing every throw he tried to make.
Like they kept. Tony Romo was coming on the commentary booth and trying to explain to that. The wind here is moving a little bit left to right, so every one of these passes he's attempting to the right-hand side of the field is missing by 1.5 yards. And the one, what he kind of highlighted to bring this up, it was like, what the hell just happened to that ball? I mean, this isn't a pass that got caught by the wind and was a little bit off target. This is a pass that came out of his hand, and you're thinking, has he forgotten how to throw? What happened to that?
Yeah. It was, at the same token, though, while this was, everything bad about Blake Bortles in one game, this was pretty much everything bad about Tyrod Taylor as well in one game. If you're going to, all the criticisms that you can show about him showed up in this game. The fact that he's missing, even on his last play of the game when he got injured, missing the open receiver on the right side of the field. That was the most egregious one of those. And just very hesitant. He's risk-averse to a fault, and then you combine that with the fact that he's throwing to Kelvin Benjamin, Deontay Thompson, Zay Jones, Charles Clay, Nick O'Leary, just a who's who of nobodies at receiver position against one of the best pass defenses in the NFL, and he's just not even going to attempt. He wasn't even attempting passes most of the time.
I was so bummed by his performance in this game because this is basically the game that people say he has every week, and it just isn't true. I mean, this was low watermark Tyrod Taylor. This is as bad as he's going to play. It was all of his mistakes in one. And it was on the biggest stage. So that argument of Tyrod Taylor is better than you think he is just so much harder to make after a game like that. And he made a lot of mistakes in this game. There were some bad plays. That last one where he took off and got himself injured, he had a guy wide open on the right-hand side the whole time, was always reading the left of the field, never got there. The whole play he was open, and he never saw it. And people claim there's like half a dozen of those every single week, and it just isn't. The other thing, though, is that it was such a horrible situation because that defense is so good. So anytime Tyrod Taylor is facing a series, you're going to lose one down because the defense is so good they're going to win one of those plays. You're going to lose one down because your receivers are so bad they're going to screw up one of those plays, which leaves you with one play to make 10 yards and keep the chains moving. And Tyrod Taylor just wasn't good enough to get that done this day.
As recent, like his first year plus as a starter, he was the same guy, but he'd always seem to make that one special throw per game, right? I feel like that's the thing that has disappeared and kept him from making the next step. His deep balls this year, everything's off. 41% of his deep balls have been overthrown.
Yeah, he had 41%. Some guys. He had some crossing routes open that he still airmailed in that one. Yeah,
yeah.
And
deep passes.
In the deep pass, so that's the highest percentage in the league. So that used to be like you have this like uncomfortable Tyrod game, and they're not sustaining offense. But boom, he drops this 45-yard deep ball in a bucket, hits Sammy Watkins as recently as a couple years ago. Felt like he did that once a game, and that kind of kept Buffalo in it. That's what was missing in this one.
Maybe he still thinks he has Sammy Watkins running.
Maybe that's it.
And so he's overthrowing him. He's all like, "Why aren't these guys?" He has Marquise Goodwin, and he's like, that guy's not running a 4.3. What's going on?"
And the thing about this game,
he doesn't know how to gauge receiver speed.
He thinks everyone runs fast.
The thing about this game is that those passes were there. Like he had receivers open 3 or 4 times in this game, overthrew I think all of them. If he'd connected on one of those, this was the kind of game where one of those plays completely transforms it, and you're talking about a different ball game, a different outcome. And Blake Bortles suddenly having to try and chase the game, and he just missed on every single one of them.
His most egregious, though, in my opinion, mistakes of the game were the 2 end zone fades to Kelvin Benjamin were called run plays. Those were run blocked. That was supposed to be handed off to LaShawn McCoy. He pulled it through the fade. And a 50-50 ball between Jalen Ramsey and Kelvin Benjamin. I am putting my money on Ramsey coming down with that more than Benjamin. I'm just saying.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Those were terrible decisions, in my opinion.
I mean, they were RPOs. This is the problem with signing Kelvin Benjamin, is that is supposed to be the only thing that he's good at, and he just isn't. If the first good thing you can say about a receiver is he is a contested catch guy, it means he is a bad wide receiver, and that is Kelvin Benjamin's problem. His biggest strength is winning contested catches, and he isn't particularly good at that, at which point he is a bad wide receiver who you brought in and instructed your quarterback to essentially feed him the ball because he's a contested catch guy. His catch radius is amazing.
Instructed your quarterback that hates doing that.
Exactly. So now you've got Tyrod, and he's there facing RPOs down in the goal line. He sees one-on-one Kelvin Benjamin for a fade. This is my contested catch guy.
You think,
let's throw it to him.
Should be,
Only Jalen Ramsey is better than he is, so he shuts him down. And they managed to turn
negative 10 yards on those 2 plays.
Well, they managed to. They got an absolute break. A guy jumping offside on a short field goal turned it into a first down in the shadow of the goal line. They managed to turn that into a harder field goal attempt than the one they had.
It was ugly. Jags move on. Steelers next week. I think their offense will look a little better. I think that one will be fun to watch as well. We shall see. Last game of the weekend, Panthers travel to New Orleans. Exciting one down the stretch. Some fantastic quarterback play in this one. Cam, Andrew both made some throws down the stretch in this one. I wanted to see Derek Anderson, though. I think he could have led them back.
Why? Why do you want to see that?
I just for the post-game press conference where he blows up and yells at all the reporters.
Nobody wanted to really see Derek Anderson. Hey, coming into this game, if you said Cam was going to play like that, make the type of throws that he made, you think, well, first off, you think that's the only shot Carolina has to win, right? And I saw debates on Twitter last week where people were saying, hey, the Panthers can win without Cam, and other people are like, wait, this is ridiculous how much they're putting on his shoulders. I'm a lot closer to they need Cam to be near perfect for them to win, but he made some great throws. Some guys let him down, and they still just could not stop Drew Brees and the Saints, so they lost.
That's the key, is this defense was never going to be good enough to stop the Saints. And now in 3 encounters this year, the Saints have put up 30 points on the Panthers. So in order to win this game, the Panthers were going to need to match that, and they were going to need great Cam Newton to do it. Now, as it happened, they got great Cam Newton, and it still wasn't enough. But at least that put them in the ballgame. That gave them a shot to get some stuff done. And he was fantastic. And this is a game that swung so much on like a 20-second stretch of disaster for the Carolina Panthers. Cam Newton throws a fantastic touchdown into the corner of the end zone, dropped by his wide receiver. They then shank a 25-yard. Blair Walsh missed from 27. He would have been good from 25.
Graham Gano's good too. Like he's good. That was wild. Yeah.
Missed a 25-yard field goal
in a dome.
They kick it off. The Saints run a play. The next play, 80-yard touchdown to Ted Ginn. So that is a 7-point lead for the Panthers, turning into a 7-point deficit in the space of about 20 seconds of gameplay.
What a momentum switch.
Yeah, I mean that's a 14-point swing in a game that was decided by 5 points in the end. That's huge.
It really was, and I still don't know what coverage the Panthers were running on that 80-yard touchdown to Ted Ginn. They ran a zone blitz, but then they didn't have
center field.
They didn't have anyone in center field. It wasn't man, and
it looked like three guys were playing quarters.
Yes.
And quarters is what it sounds like.
And it went into the fourth quarter.
Right,
that wasn't.
Right. It's four guys playing a quarter of the field, essentially, with some man coverage principles. But, yes, the ball went right to where the fourth guy would be.
Also, poor James Bradbury was like inches from making some kind of play on that twice. He almost got the ball and then almost managed to pull it out of Ginn's hand and then ends up face first in the turf watching him run the last, whatever it was, 50 yards.
It was incredibly poetic that Ted Ginn, after all the drop touchdowns, has that that he had in Carolina, catches that immediately after a Carolina receiver that replaced him drops a touchdown.
Yeah.
So just very poetic
Drew
on
Brees
a lot of
more
levels.
Catchable ball. He has the lowest percentage of drops on positively graded throws this year. How about that one? Lowest percentage of incompletions.
That'll make you look good.
He's actually had a lot of help from his playmakers. They're playing well.
This was such a huge game for that offense, though, that it highlighted why the Saints team is so dangerous, because you said it for weeks that they haven't needed Drew Brees. They've been riding this two-headed monster in the backfield of Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, and those guys got absolutely nothing done. They were shut down by this Panthers defense, and they went, okay, Drew Brees, win the game for us. And it turns out Drew Brees, a Hall of Fame quarterback, still playing at an elite level, is still well capable of doing that, at which point this offense becomes a pretty terrifying prospect to try and stop.
Yeah, look, we've raved about the Falcons here, but I still think the Saints are the team to beat in the NFC. It's not going to be easy beating the Vikings, but I just like the fact that the Saints can win different ways, whether it's the run game, whether it's the pass game, whether it's pass defense. Look, they gave up a lot yesterday, had their own busted coverages and their own rough plays, but they can win in a number of different ways now, which I don't know if every team in the NFC can really say that.
I do still worry, though, about their defense, especially their pass rush, when it's not Cam Jordan. Jordan, fantastic yesterday. He had a sack, a hit, 3 hurries, easily their highest graded player, a couple batted passes. On all the other defensive ends for the Saints, not named Cam Jordan, 45 pass rushes, not a single pressure against the Panthers. That's just you got to get pressure against that Vikings O-line next week if they're going to have a chance. And it's a worse O-line than they face this week in the Panthers probably, but that's still worrisome going forward.
That hit that Cam Newton took, I think, would have obliterated a regular human being quarterback.
The one where he still held on to the ball.
He spun through and just
that one.
Looked up into a giant hit from David Onyemata that just destroyed him, the one that put him out briefly from the game. If that hit any other quarterback, I think that guy would be down and done. And Cam Newton just he seemed to shake it off, and the only thing that really bothered him is his ridiculous face mask thing, not the visor in his face mask. The hit was so hard that thing deformed and poked him somewhere. That's how tough that guy is.
We're going to get back to the games, but first, this episode was brought to you by PredictionMachine.com. Prediction Machine, a new generation in sports analytics where they play the games 50,000 times before they're actually played. Make better picks with proven data-driven analysis. Subscribe at PredictionMachine.com today and earn a $5 credit that can be used towards the purchase of any package. Wild game, though. Saints will travel to Minnesota to face the Vikings. I actually think this was their best-case scenario to get the Falcons, because now if they do win, they will be hosting NFC Championship game if the Falcons also win, or they'll be going to, obviously, the Eagles. Because either way, I think if the Rams won, they probably would have had to go to Minnesota anyways for the NFC Championship game. So probably their ideal situation, if you're talking about just going to the Super Bowl for the Saints, to have the Rams lose. I don't know.
Too much dome action for the playoffs for my liking.
You were just bitching about the field conditions.
Well,
and now it's too much of a dome situation for everybody.
Yeah, but that was fair weather, Southern California, slippery field.
So you want outdoor conditions with a perfect field.
Yeah, I want Brad. Dude, it was 0 degrees in half the country this weekend. I want to see games in that type of weather. That's what I'm looking for.
You want a snow playoff game is what you want.
A little bit of snow's not the worst.
Mike doesn't like snow.
I don't like snow anything games.
Why not?
It's just cold. It's cold. I hate the cold.
We're not going to the games. We're not going.
You telling me if you had that?
I get the.
Is that why you didn't want to leave the house this morning?
It's awful.
You don't want that Buffalo snowstorm game in the postseason?
I wake up freezing every day, and it sucks.
I don't want snow to the point where dudes can't even run in a straight line. So you don't need that much snow.
I want that
for a playoff game. I don't want that much for a playoff game.
Why not? What if it's a playoff game that otherwise would be miserable?
No, if it
So
enhances
he
it.
wanted it for the Jaguars Bills. He wanted full snow.
I wanted
I wanted
either
snow in Jacksonville for sure.
Snow
It
in
would've been
Jacksonville,
great.
and next week I want snow in New England. There's a 14-point spread in that game. I want knee-deep snow for the Titans.
Because the last time the Patriots and Titans played in snow, it was 59-0, and the Titans threw for negative yardage. So just throwing that one out there.
I'm not saying it's going to fix the problem. I'm just saying it's more interesting.
It would
that
be
way.
more interesting.
All right, let's keep it moving and get into some segments here. First one up, 5 elite signature stats you need to know from this weekend's games. The first one, we talked about it a little bit, but Aaron Donald, 7 pressures in the first quarter against the Falcons.
First quarter only?
First quarter, he had 7 pressures. No one else, I believe, had 7 pressures all week.
That's insane.
I don't think I've ever. I think that might be a record.
It
not
was a
talented
record
enough.
for the first half.
Okay.
I don't know if it was.
So
a
that
record for the
that
first quarter,
has to be.
But
then
yeah,
for-
I would assume so.
All right. Next one up. The Falcons defense only limited the Rams receivers to 2.25 yards after the catch. The Rams led the NFL this year at 6.7 average.
Ooh,
Almost a
that's good one.
third of their total.
I mean, that's the
That was the
Todd
difference.
Gurley deal.
That was
That's
the game right there.
So much of those plays are passes to Todd Gurley in behind the defense, and he's gone for 80 yards. Now it was passes to Todd Gurley, and he's got a guy in Deion Jones in his face, and he's stuffed.
One broken tackle after catch all day long. They used to average over 3 this year per game. That was doing work for the Falcons defense for sure. Third signature stat you need to know. Tyrod Taylor had 5 throwaways, tied for the most in a single game all season long.
Nice. I'll give you another Tyrod one. He was accurate on 0% of those deep passes. Had 4, I think, deep shots. Hit none of them. Missed on all of them.
Tied for the lowest all season long, too.
If you just hit one.
Yeah.
If you just hit
One of
one,
them.
it's a game changer.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what we talked about last Thursday. It's like just all they needed was one, we thought, if they hit one.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Fourth signature stat you need to know. Alex Smith's receivers dropped 4 passes for a total of 55 yards. 3 of those passes would have gone for first downs through the air.
Yeah. Huge. I mean, one of the first plays anyway, first couple of plays for the Chiefs, deep pass over Dory Jackson. Tyreek Hill has a step on him and drops the ball.
They wanted to feed Tyreek early. They got the ball in his hands. They had the deep ball opportunity. He dropped another first down pretty early. Game plan looked good to get him the ball, and he wasn't catching the ball.
Last elite signature stat you need to know. When targeting wide receivers against the Panthers, Drew Brees was 17 of 21 for 297 yards and a touchdown.
Wow.
It's 14.1 yards per attempt.
That's pretty good.
That's
Including that
not
Ted
bad.
Ginn 80-yard touchdown.
That's not bad. And one of those was dropped also, which that's not bad. That's not bad work. I bet that changes next week. That's all I'll say. I bet the Vikings have a little bit more of a game plan to stop that. We shall see, though.
Yeah, I think the Vikings are better situated, and they don't need to sell out to stop the running backs as much, and they can actually try and create some sort of balanced defensive game plan.
Agreed. All right, keep moving. Next segment, explain that grade. We get a lot of flack here at PFF for some of our grades. People, they don't always match up with the stats, and people sometimes don't seem to like that. They want it to match up to the stats and what their eyes see, but they don't always. And I think this is a case where, the stats kind of matched up, but Alex Smith was our highest graded quarterback of the weekend, 87.3 overall grade. His team lost, though. Steve, explain that grade.
Oh, Alex Smith lost, but he still played well. First off, he did get the majority of his grade in the first half. When they were dominating, he was hitting open receivers. He was pinpoint. We talked about that Tyreek Hill play. Forget the stats for a minute. You'd add another, would have been about a 70-yard touchdown, essentially, to that. And the stats are even more off the charts. So he did throw the ball extremely well. He finished the game 24 for 33, but you add in those 4 drops that you mentioned, that's 28 of 33 as far as just pure on-target passes. He did not miss many throws, and I think when you look at the second half when they did struggle to move the ball, it was not so much about Alex Smith. We're talking about tight press man coverage that the Titans were playing. Guys weren't getting open. That's not necessarily on Alex Smith. Would you like to see him hit that Albert Wilson pass down the seam? Maybe find an easier throw, too, on fourth down? Mm-hmm. Would you like to see him throw a guy open in tight coverage? Absolutely. But he really didn't miss a whole lot in that game, and he was so good in the first half. That was a big part of what carried his grade.
As I said, those 3 drops, 3 of the 4 drops would have been first downs. One of them was huge at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Would have been a first down. It was on third down. Would have taken them into Titans territory. Instead, they punted. Titans would eventually score that next drive. and the rest is history. Game looks a lot better if some of those catches go his way, is all I'll say. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Smith played pretty well. I thought ultimately, a couple quirky calls and a couple plays, plus the run defense is what really let down Kansas City.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Now, the glorious return of Mike's hot take of the week. We had a few at the beginning of the season, but it went into hibernation for a while. But I got a fiery one that Gordon McGinnis would love right now, and it's kickers are severely underpaid right now in the NFL.
Underpaid?
They are severely underpaid right now in the NFL. Now, I'm not saying that you go out and draft a kicker in the second round, because wasting draft capital on a kicker is stupid. Sample sizes are tiny in college. You have no clue what you're going to get from a guy. But once you know what that guy is, once you know it's a guy like Justin Tucker, once you know it's a Stephen Gostkowski, a Dan Bailey, they are worth far more than what they're getting paid right now. Justin Tucker is making $4.2 million, Stephen Gostkowski $4.3. Most of the best kickers are in the neighborhood of $4 million. That is 2.4% of the cap. That's chump change. Here's a list of players making more than $4.2 million a year. Jeff Allen, Donald Stevenson, Lawrence Timmons, $6 million. William Golson, $5.5 million. Stacey McGee, $5 million. Jeremy Lane, $5.8 million. Jermaine Kearse, $4.5 million. Marcus Wheaton, $5.5 million. Rhett Ellison, which, if you don't know who Rhett Ellison is, he's a tight end for the Giants, $4.5 million.
/ fullback.
Deion Sims, $6 million. And this guy's not making more than actually Gostkowski, but I think I just throw him in there. Matt Schaub, $4 million.
It's a lot of
the two
leadership
teams that lost, whose kickers missed field goals this weekend lost. I know it's a small sample size, but
you're basing it
what
off
are you trying to say? No, that just led a little bit to it. But if the Panthers make that field goal, it's a different game. If the Chiefs make that one field goal, it's a different game.
Can we run this? Let's run this by the analytics guys, because they could run some numbers on it. But
that wouldn't be a hot take then.
Oh, that's true.
But yeah, we can run it by.
Guarantee that these guys are going to be good year in, year out?
Yes,
that's
some.
That's the issue. So you're just saying, what percentage of these top? Is it 5 guys, 10 guys that need to be in this? In what range do you want to put them in?
I'm still blown away
When
by
they're
the
good.
idea that
Justin Tucker is underpaid. They are severely underpaid. I would pay Justin Tucker $8 million a year.
$8 million a year.
Yes,
that's a big chunk of your
If you're
cap.
guaranteed to be Justin
that's
Tucker, though,
4.8% of your cap.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But that's what I'm saying. Once you know what a guy is, and I think after a guy's rookie contract, you know what they are. Guys are fairly then consistent, somewhat year on year, in terms of being better than your average kicker. Then they're worth a lot more, in my opinion.
I think it's true that the bad kicker, certainly now, especially with the lengthening of extra points, etc., the ability to be robotic and hit those things is huge. My mind is still blown by the idea that Matt Schaub is making $4 million for nothing. Mm-hmm. There is no situation in which he makes you better. He is basically being paid $4 million to be a slightly useful member of a quarterback meeting room,
exactly,
which is what the Cowboys are now getting from Kellen Moore, who just retired and is presumably now making a fraction of $4 million to have exactly that same role.
You're a good QB room guy. We're going to cut your pay and call you coach.
Yeah, exactly. And yet, for somehow, Schaub is parlaying that into $4 million.
Are we supposed to give you our opinions on the take? Really?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, what's your take on the take?
I don't hate it.
There we go.
I don't hate it.
That's what I was looking for.
I think there's something to this top end deal and this minimum sample size of trust, because there have been guys who have just kind of fallen off the map at times as kickers, but I think there is that small group that is very consistent.
Yeah, like Matt
Finding
Prater,
the guys
Robbie
tough.
Gold,
Yeah.
Matt Bryant. There are guys, Justin Tucker. They're guys who year in, year out are good kickers that I think when you have a guy like that, like a top 8 kicker in the NFL, those guys are fairly consistent. I'm paying those guys more than if Justin Tucker ever got to the open market, I'd pay him $8 million.
I think you're coming at this problem from the wrong angle. I think you've identified the right thing, which is, these guys are having huge impacts on games, and they're getting paid a relative fraction for this. I think the solution to that is to make sure these people are having a lot less impact on games.
I don't hate that either.
And keeping them paid relatively little, because who the hell wants a kicker getting paid $8 million a year?
Convert more first downs, maybe. Don't have to worry about kicks.
Yes.
I feel like trying to think of a way to solve this problem. That'll be a hot take for another show. But that's the take, and I think think I'm proven right by this past weekend's games. I'll just say.
Yeah, this
even
weekend,
though I have no
proved
clues.
it all.
But the 2 games, that's definitely, I'm right on that. All right, last segment here called What's Wrong With, highlighting a player every week who's having a rough time, having a rough go. This week, Leonard Fournette of the Jaguars. Over his last 3 games, 58 carries, averaging 3 yards per carry, 1.8 yards after contact per attempt. He's broken 1 tackle in his last 58.
Gosh.
He has 1 carry over 10 yards in that span.
That was that little misdirection pitch.
Yeah, and it was,
right?
I could have run.
Straight line stuff.
16 yards, straight in the line on the edge. I could have done it. Sam could have done it. Steve could have gotten about 6.
You should have seen me. I was running out in the rain today. I moved quick. I could do it.
You were jogging. What's wrong with him, Steve?
I don't know if this is a huge difference from what he was. I did think in the NFL
it was a loaded segment.
What's wrong with him? I did think that he was going to run through contact better in the NFL level. I thought that he would force a few more missed tackles at the NFL level. His peak year of 2015, when he forced the 83 missed tackles that led the nation, he was much better than he was previously as far as quickness goes and his ability to kind of string moves together. But you didn't see that last year at LSU, and you haven't really seen that this year with Jacksonville. So what I think the big picture view is for Leonard Fournette, we have 4 years that we've seen him play at the FBS level or the NFL level. One of them was exceptional, that 2015 near Heisman year. Everything else has been just kind of not great overall. So is that just what he is at this point?
I got to be honest. I'm still salty that we had him 23rd on our final big board. I called him not a first rounder. I think they were crazy to draft him in the top 5. I think he's lived up to that, not being a top 5 pick, not being a first rounder, because his vision is just not good for a running back. And they ask him to run against loaded boxes where, they have these 2 tight end, multiple, formations where your vision takes over, where you have to be able to read blocks and find a seam. That was never him. His pacing was terrible at LSU. He would sprint at the line of scrimmage because if doesn't have a full head of steam, he's not a guy who's going to break tackles. And I think we've seen it. I think that's who he is at this point. He was not worth the pick.
But the Jags made the playoffs, Mike.
But the Jags made oh, gosh. Someone was trying to tell me. Someone said scoreboard to me because I criticized the Fournette pick after the game as if them winning was solely because of Fournette. Their turnaround was just because of him. Never mind, they signed Calais Campbell, A.J. Boye, that Jalen Ramsey turned to a top 5 corner, and they traded for, Marcel Darius and Sideberry Church. No, it was Fournette was the reason for their whole turnaround. He's just, I don't think they're going to have some buyer's remorse.
I think he had a toughness. That's why that defense turned around.
I mean, so reeling from the initial part of this podcast where Mike was 1-3 in picks, what we've done here is craft a segment that is Mike is actually right about some other things.
I was right.
Is that the name of this segment?
I came up with it, so I'm
prove Mike right.
It might as well be. No, do you think it could change in the future?
No, we need more.
Do you think it could change against Pittsburgh? Last time they faced off, he had that big 90-yard run. And had probably his best game of the season.
I just
Is
think
there any reason to think that happens again?
The situation there overall for the running game isn't fantastic. I mean, that offensive line is bad. It has Brandon Linder and 4 guys that aren't very good.
Cam Robinson.
Yes.
Being one of them.
Yes. Another we were right thing, I think. Despite the fact that you could get the same level play out of him for the next 5 years. And offensive line, Twitter would never actually agree that he played badly.
Look,
whatever.
It's too early on tackles.
4 guys that aren't playing well, and Brandon Linder. And then Leonard Fournette trying to run behind it. No passing game to speak of that will threaten anybody in terms of backing off the line of scrimmage and giving you more space, at which point it's really tough to get anything going under those circumstances. I mean, you're especially when you're not a dynamic threat as a receiver to do. Again, there's nothing taking attention away from the 2 or 3 run concepts they're going to hit you with that you can immediately clamp down on. It harks back to the Minnesota Vikings a few years ago when Adrian Peterson was all they had, and you need to be Adrian Peterson at the peak of your powers to still be productive in the face of that, and Fournette isn't.
They did split him out wide, threw a slant to him, and he dropped it. I mean, that's never been his game, and that was the issue that we had with him around draft time too. Is when guys like Dalvin Cook can do that, we know that Christian McCaffrey can do that. We know that Alvin Kamara can do that. Fournette's not going to be doing that. Going back to that Pittsburgh game, we'll talk about it plenty at the end of the week. 190-yard run in that game, which had way more to do with just a busted run fit
by the
Steelers. He ran in a straight line, and that's one of those things where you get 90 yards out of it, and I think he ran fast once you got that head of steam after 40 yards. But that is running through a hole where if it happened at the 5-yard line or the 40-yard line or the your own 30-yard line or your own 10 where it did, it's the same thing. You ran in a line straight.
And more to the point, because it's a busted run fit, you had to do absolutely nothing to achieve it.
Right. But you got a free 90 yards out of it, where if it just happened at the opponent's 10, you just get a 10-yard touchdown.
But you just
instead of a 90-yarder.
happened to be the guy that was getting the carry at the time the defense busted a run fit and created a large chasm in the middle of the defense.
And when you talked about his vision before, if anybody's going to bring up, hey, well, it's because his vision, this was a power play where there's not power plays are more about patience and seeing and setting up blocks than it is vision. Because
there's one or two holes.
Right. There's one hole you're looking for, essentially.
Yeah.
And he ran into the initial hole straight.
So it's a very clear intended point of attack with power play.
I will say, though, I still think Leonard Fournette is extremely talented. Like I said, I would have taken him in the second round. He is like Todd Gurley, though, in that he's counterintuitive in the way you should best use him. You need to get him out in space with a full head of steam on the edge. That's where he's best. Not between the tackles.
Right.
He's not between the tackles.
Despite the size.
Despite the size, the fact that he's 6'1", 235, whatever, and looks like he could run over everybody, that's not where he's utilized best. When he gets a full head of steam, that's when he was breaking his tackles. That's where at LSU, no one could seemingly bring him down in the open field. The Jaguars just need to do that more than they do at the moment.
Also, even guys that break tackles, you're not doing it against front seven people. When you break your tackles, it comes
like
against
arm tackles on defensive linemen.
But generally speaking, when you do the majority of your productive tackle breaking, it's against defensive backs. It's against guys in space. It's not running right up the middle into a wall of bodies because those guys are as big as you are and they have less space to screw it up.
Marshawn Lynch can still do that.
Yeah, but he's freaky.
But yeah, few people can. All right, I'm out on Leonard though.
Any other segments about Mike being right?
Being right. I don't think we have that kind of
No,
material.
we're going to save those for draft time. There's going to be a lot of those once we transition to the draft. But that's it for us today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back on Wednesday with some more NFL coverage. Have a good one.